in the Andes Mountains, the Sierra of Peru. The people who live here are Indians, and they make up nearly half of Peru's population. But these people, whose forebears created the Inca Empire, now live at the edge of starvation, doomed to a life of unremitting toil and poverty. In the last 2 decades, the Indians of the mountains have become increasingly aware that they may find a better life in the cities. At least they can get nearer to it. In the city there is better food and medical care for children and schools. Perhaps too in the city their children won't be committed to loneliness. Many younger Indians come down from the mountains to Lima because they're looking for something better. Lima is Peru's capital and its largest city. Lima is modern, a beautiful city. But most of those who come down from the Sierra to Lima seeking a better life end up here in the slums. Overpopulation and slums bursting at the seams are, as we all know, the lot of big cities everywhere today. The population of Lima, Peru, for instance, has trebled in the last 20 years. It's gone up from about 600,000 to over 2 million. So that even the people living in the slums pay unreasonably high rents. And sooner or later they're bound to ask for what? They look out around the outskirts of their city and they see lots of unoccupied land, which to everybody else looks like wasteland, and to them looks like the green pastures. So some years ago, they decided to organize in secret and set up what they call barriadas, a sort of squatters' suburbs. Our system is quite simple. They would pick a night and they would pick a piece of land and they would quietly move out of the slums and invade the land in a body and then set up rough temporary shelters. Over the years, the Peruvian government came to see that though these people's mood was desperate, their needs were real, and the government started to seek legal means to help them to hold on to their barriada homesteads. In fact, the government has gone so far now that it tries to help plan these barriadas and hopes in time to extend to them the municipal services. Now, this doesn't mean that all the invasions have stopped. Our United Nations camera crew got in on a meeting which could well end in such an invasion. The people here represented a large group of slum dwellers who were determined to move out of the slums into the wasteland, whether it was state-owned or privately owned. The chairman has just said that they will pay for the land what the law requires. They want what all humanity wants, to live in dignity. Now, he's saying, once we've nominated our officers and made our organization official, we will apply to the government housing people and ask them to solve our problems and assign us a suitable block of land. If the housing administration does not solve our problems, we are determined to invade any available land because we can't go on living as we are. If we have to invade barren land, those in favor of that procedure, raise your hands. The motion is carried. If necessary, the invasion will take place. And Emilio will be our leader.
Hay que llevar 4 palos, 4 esteras. Hay que llevar linterna. O sea,
This is Alessandro Rocca.
Así que como yo tenía platita
He is recalling an actual invasion, the invasion of the Ermitaño barriada in 1962.
Para venirme acá, hice eso.
At 11:30, on the agreed-upon night, he arrived at the main square of Cuevas, an older established barriada nearby. Senor Rocca says, well, the time came to invade. Midnight exactly. We started to march, all happy but quiet. Finally, we arrived at this flat place. It was full of mud. There was alfalfa, grass, some sweet potato. It was very muddy. At 4:30 in the morning, we started to sing the national anthem of Peru. It is better not to recall these things. I suffered. Now, finally, they're going to give me my plot. But on that night, some were crying, some were laughing and clapping, and some cheered the leaders of the invasion. At almost the same moment, many of us spotted a large group of mounted soldiers coming towards us. And we started to shout, the police are coming, the police are coming. Our leaders shouted to us, don't move, you'll have to fight. So with this encouragement, with these words, we didn't move, each in his place with his children at his side, ready to fight them off with our sticks. If they fought, we would fight back. Newspaper accounts and these news photographs corroborate Senor Rocca's story. The police asked for the names of the leaders, but none of the invaders would give their names. The police informed them that they had no right to take the land. Senor Rocca says, everybody got ready. Other police officers kept coming back to talk with us. They told us to clear out. We said we will only leave this place dead, not alive. That morning, the invasion of the land for the Ermitaño barriada turned into a riot. The police were forced to use tear gas. Finally, the straw huts the invaders had begun to put up were pulled down and the mats dragged away, and some people were injured. By 8:30 in the morning, most of the invaders had begun to leave the immediate vicinity, but they were determined not to go far. They reassembled on a hill nearby, while their leaders negotiated with the government to allow them to stay. A week later, they quietly returned and the barriada was established. Senor Rocca says, I know I will never forget the suffering until the day of my death. The suffering of poverty in Lima, where I couldn't afford a roof of my own. For this, we have come here. We have suffered, but we have got our land. My hope was to get a piece of land no matter where, however it could be got. Now I am content. Today there are many barriadas on the outskirts of Lima. Some are so new that the mat houses look very much like the huts of the slums. But there is a difference. These houses belong to the people who live in them. This will be the temporary home of a family that's just moving into the barriada of San Pedro. As soon as they are able, they'll start building a house of bricks or stone. Chances are that they will build their permanent home little by little. It will depend on their means, their own hard work, and the extent to which their government can help them. In the meantime, accepting the ancient custom of help from their neighbors, they're putting up straw mats that may be their shelter for several months and maybe for several years. As soon as people in the barriadas have some kind of roof over their heads, they pitch in to build another, bigger structure. they pitch in to build a school. Some barriadas do not have piped water supplies. This may simply be because a barriada is so new, the mains haven't been laid yet. It may be because a barriada has been built too far from the city, in which case it may never have piped water, and that's going to be a problem. Another problem. Most barriadas are some distance from Lima, and few of the families own cars. But the problems are small compared to the benefits. That's why people come to the barriadas. She and her husband and children were living all crowded together in the slums. She says, we heard there was going to be an invasion, so we joined it and came to live in Ermitaño. We left because of the children. In Lima they got sick. Here the children are healthier and happier. Not only slum dwellers come to live in the barriadas. This man is an electrician with a reasonably good income. He says, when I married, I rented a big house for which I paid 80 soles a month. But rents have gone up 12 times until they imposed a rent of 1,000 soles. I paid the 1,000 soles for 3 months. Then they gave me the alternative of getting out or paying even more, so I got out. When the invasion succeeded, I left that house and came to live here. Oswaldo Paros is an original invader in the Ermitaño barriada. He says, people don't want money from the government so much as they want technical help. In some places, people are forming groups like the system of the old Inca times called the Minga. Heads of families from 9 or 10 blocks work together in a given place until the houses are up. Then they go to another place, working Sundays and holidays. In other words, they steal hours of leisure to build their houses. The painful times are past, but this song commemorates those times still.
Somos pobres y olvidados por los mismos gobernantes. Somos pobres y olvidados por los mismos gobernantes. ¿Hasta cuándo caballazos, garrotazos y bombazos? ¿Hasta cuándo caballazos, garrotazos y bombazos? Dando contra los peruanos, apoyando a millonarios. Dando contra los peruanos, apoyando a millonarios. Hey, chacholito.
In the barriadas they brought into being, more than 350,000 people have built or are building homes of their own. Most of them come from the slums of Lima, where they had no hope of finding anything better than a ramshackle hut at an exorbitant rent. Now they are building solid homes, often with the help of their neighbors and with technical, sometimes financial help from their government. That's why barriadas improve while slums decay. At the time this film was made, no barriada dwellers owned the land on which they were building. But before long, they hoped to acquire the right to buy it. Javier Velarde is Vice President of the Peruvian Housing Administration.
Now I think that in the case of the barriadas, it should be a different approach. I think that they should pay for a piece of land with urbanized land with minimum services. Because in the barriadas there's an investment in walls of bricks and so on that should be channelized. And if we can give them urbanized land, they could give us their economical support with this work they do by themselves, and eventually in 5 or 6 years they could have a decent home.
Would they own their houses or would they rent
Yes,
them?
no, they would own the houses. They would own the houses because as low-income brackets, we study more of them, we find that they seek security with ownership. And they desire the ownership, and we have to find a way of giving them this. So we would give them the opportunity to cooperate with them, giving them technical advice and helping them to build the rest of the house.
Do you think that the people who are now building in the barriadas would go for this kind of idea?
I think so, yes. I've talked to many of them, and what they seek is security towards the ownership, but they see that they can't be served with water or sewage. They've gone into the land, in the ladders of the mountains, where it makes impossible to finance economic sewage and water. Now, in this case, we have looked for flat land near the urban area and near the lines of transportation. In this case, they would feel more living with the community facilities that the city can offer. And to the city, the expenses would be much lesser. We have to realize that we are an underdeveloped country and that we can't afford certain luxuries as in the United States. We can't spread the city. We have to concentrate the city in order not to disperse our expenses.
Actualmente hay un equipo acá atendiendo a estas personas.
Celia Campas de Campaña.
Por arquitectos, ingenieros y
Senora Campaña is telling us that the Housing Administration now has a team at the Ermitaño Barriada composed of architects, engineers, and social workers like herself.
De entendimiento, de comprensión a ellos, a sus necesidades.
As for the social workers, she says, our job is first of all to understand the needs of the people and to help them with their problems and to prepare them for life here in the barriada.
Para que participen en la construcción de sus viviendas. Todavía no hemos.
The architects and engineers give them the technical aid they need in the construction of their homes.
El trabajo ha empezado por esta etapa.
This is a far cry from the reception the people of the Ermitaño Barriada received when they invaded the land. And this house in the Comas barriada is a far cry from a temporary straw shack. The Cordova family has lived in their shack for 6 years already, waiting for their permanent home to be finished. Even though her family can't move in yet, Senora Cordova is proud of her new house. She's showing it to an architect employed by the Peruvian Housing Administration, who is also a consultant to the United Nations on squatter settlements. Other international experts are concerned with overcrowding in cities like Calcutta, London, Rome, and New York. Their reports make up a pool of United Nations experience that is invaluable to housing planners all over the world. Senora Cordova has shown him the dining room and the living room. She leads the way into the kitchen. She explains that the water is being installed. The bathroom. The water is in, but it can't be used until there's drainage. There will be a shower here. This is a bedroom. There are 3 bedrooms. Someday, when they have the money, there will be a second floor in the house for the children. It will be the same as the first floor. These children have come a long way from here. Someday these people who have so little may move to one of the barriadas and find there the better life for which they came to the city. This is a marketplace in a barriada. It looks like any other marketplace, but it shows the extent to which barriadas have become established. It means the barriada has become a community in its own right. Many people are now working as well as living in the barriadas. More and more jobs are becoming available in the markets, in small shops and other services. Barriadas are not necessarily the solution to the housing problems of many of the world's big cities. They're not even the whole solution to Lima's problems, but they are one solution, and unique in that it has come from the people themselves. Mr. Fernando Balaonde Terry, the President of Peru.
The expression mutual aid has the same meaning all over the world, the same literary meaning. But in the case of Peru, it has a philosophical, a historical meaning. Because our old civilization, which didn't have a monetary system, practiced mutual aid as the only source of production. That is why we had such large road construction systems, such wonderful agriculture, terracing, channels, irrigation. That is why we are hoping to mix this modern economy, which will mean paying for technical direction, for machinery, for tools, and the old archaic economy, which would mean given the will and the effort to do things without an economic interest, without a personal interest, but with high cooperative ideals. If we succeed, as we are doing now, to continue these two systems in an economy that could be called a half-breed economy, then this period of transition to a modern system, a fully modern system, will be shorter, and we will soon reach the goal we need to raise the standard of living of our peoples.
¿Hasta cuándo, caballazo? Garrotazos y bombazos. ¿Hasta cuándo, caballazo? Garrotazos y bombazos. Dando contra los peruanos, apoyando a millonarios. Dando contra los peruanos, apoyando a millonarios. Ahora, fuera con Atahualtico y otro hermano de Ermitaño. Fuera con Atahualtico y otro hermano de Ermitaño. Todos felices.